helicopter program Careflight actually began operations in October of 1983, and there had been about 5 years of preliminary work done before Careflight came into operations to evaluate whether or not a helicopter was even needed at that time in the region or in the country. Like all of the helicopter services, it was came out of military, where the military had proven effectiveness of helicopters being used in the Korean War and other eras, and value was found, that the decision was made to start a helicopter program in Dayton, Ohio. It was very good vision back then to look at developing a helicopter program in this area. The first year when we started, it was a really new concept to the area. And so a good portion was spent doing education on how to use the helicopter, how to bring it into an accident scene safely, and when would be the right time to call, and the right time to use the helicopter based on the patient's injury or illness. And we spent a lot of time doing that. And to be honest, they also were our teachers, because we were very new, and you had flight nurses. As I said, we operate 2 nurses, and so the EMS and pre-hospital people were tremendous in teaching us about accident scenes, how we work together, and so it's kind of a teamwork thing that we learned about each other. Careflight performs 2 functions. We either go directly to an accident scene, which is probably the one that people are more familiar with, and that's when we get called by a paramedic, a firefighter, or a police officer. And we're what's known as a second responder, meaning that our pre-hospital folks arrive, they make decisions as to whether the patient warrants a transport by a helicopter, and then they request the aircraft and bring it in. That's about 50% of what we do. The other 50% is providing a transportation method for smaller community hospitals. And so many times patients will come into a smaller community hospital, or maybe a larger hospital that doesn't provide a specialty service, and they are quite ill and require immediate transport to a tertiary care center that can provide this particular service. And so the physician in that case will make the decision to access the helicopter. Those patients might be patients that require immediate surgery that's not available there, cardiac care that's not available there, stroke care that's not available there, and oftentimes it can be high-risk obstetric patients where either the mother or the baby is at risk. And one of the things that we've recently branched into is transporting neonatal patients requiring neonatal care, which is our, we call it our NEO-Flight program. And these are premature born infants who require the specialization at a neonatal intensive care. And so they often need to be transported immediately with a high level of care, and so we would provide that type of service. Over the 30 years, there's been significant growth. We now own 4 helicopters, and we have 3 actual bases, and one of them serves as our backup aircraft so that we can always provide the service to the community, that we're never out of service. We have a helicopter that's in Lebanon, Ohio at the Warren County Airport. We have a helicopter that's in Urbana, Ohio at Grimes Field, which is an airport. And we have a helicopter based here in Dayton, Ohio at Miami Valley Hospital. And then we also have our backup aircraft, which is in Moraine, Ohio. From the 12 people that we started with when I started flying, there's now close to 150 people working in the Careflight program today. So it's grown significantly and has allowed us to reach out farther to the communities we serve by adding these other resources. One of the other things we did over the course of the 30 years was to venture into the mobile intensive care unit service that we provide, and that's really a ground ambulance service that is like the helicopter. It has a flight nurse on it and a critical care paramedic and the same types of equipment, but it allows us to deliver care to those patients that require critical care, that are critically injured or ill, and not necessarily in a helicopter. One of the big benefits to this is if for any reason we can't operate due to weather, and then patients can still be transported properly by using a ground system. The Mobile Intensive Care Unit program is also based out in the community. We have two that are based in Centerville at Miami Valley South Hospital, and then we have one that's at the Jamestown Emergency Center, which is in Jamestown, Ohio, and we have one that's based here at Miami Valley Hospital. They serve a 75-mile radius around Dayton, so they will do fairly lengthy transports and certainly serve all the hospitals in the community, as does the helicopter program. So they're also satellite based to help with response times when patients need to be transported.
The difference between a mobile intensive care unit versus an ambulance, which all of us are versed in EMS, is that in the MICU we carry a few things that are different than what a normal ambulance carries, because we're not doing the pre-hospital to the hospital, we're doing hospital to hospital. So we aren't typically working on the scene like the paramedics do. They're the first responders. We usually get there to the hospital. So what we carry in this is we carry ventilators, we carry transport pumps, and because a lot of our patients are, like if they come from an ICU, they have multiple drips, they have multiple procedures that have already been done to them. So we have to carry the equipment to be able to maintain those procedures, like intra-aortic balloon pump or chest tubes.
So my responsibility as the medical director at Careflight includes the protocols. Protocols are basically written information on care of the patient. Careflight protocols are 65 pages long. They cover both pediatric, adult, high-risk OB, trauma, medical. Our caregivers are providing advanced care. So to do that, under the state law, they have to have a physician write protocols, and they have to follow the protocols. So those protocols are day-to-day use of taking care of the patient, once again, whether it's at the scene, at a local hospital, and whether it's medical or trauma. The trauma patients have usually two destinations initially. That would be either the emergency department or the operating room. In general, that's the emergency department, but at any time they can be diverted to the operating room. For other patients that are transported by Careflight, they can either go to the emergency department or directly admitted, often to one of the intensive care units. So in general, someone coming from the scene of either an accident or a significant medical situation will be taken to the emergency department. Interfacility transfers either may go to the emergency department or directly to the intensive care unit, and if they require immediate operative intervention, they can be taken to the operating room.
Here at Careflight, we have 7 mechanics. We have 2 mechanics per base, and then myself, I'm the lead mechanic. Every day, each mechanic looks at the aircraft, and we do pre-flight inspections Monday through Friday, along with the pilot who looks at the aircraft every day before a shift. Every 10 flight hours, we take the aircraft out of service to do inspections on the aircraft from top to bottom. And every couple of weeks, when the aircraft come out of service, we have to bring them down to Moraine and do the heavy maintenance on them. Anything more than a day out of service, we bring it here. Everything else is done at the bases in Urbana, Lebanon, and on top of the hospital on the 7th floor. During the 10-hour inspection, we go on top of the aircraft and look at the main rotor head, and we check for cracks in the Starflex, which holds the blades on. And we also look at the tail rotor gearbox every 10 flight hours. The mechanics feel a sense of helping the community, because Careflight does help the community out, and we're a part of that. We may be behind the scenes, but we're still helping keep everyone safe flying the aircraft and picking up patients that need help. And at scenes of accidents, they know they can get in a safe helicopter. Careflight has 4 aircraft, an N model, an N2, and 2 N3s. The N3s and the N2 are in service, and the N model 63CF is a spare aircraft. It fills in when the other aircraft are in maintenance, like this one. The new one we're getting is an N3 Plus, so it's the newest, has the latest avionics packages and safety equipment. The Dolphin's a good choice because of its safety record and its speed. They have the ability to carry 2 patients. The dual engine, it's a fully capable IFR. One unique attribute of the Dolphin is the retractable landing gear. Most aircraft have skids, The Dolphin with their retractable landing gear is a little bit faster and aerodynamic, and we're able to ground taxi and do roll-on landings. Right now all of our mechanics are on a rotating schedule, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If we have an issue with the aircraft, a mechanic will respond. If it can be out broken at a scene of an accident at one of our bases, at the hospital, and our mechanics are on call 24 hours a day to respond to issues with the aircraft.
Requests for transportation for hospital-to-hospital transfers come through the Access Center. Typically most of our MICUs are hospital-to-hospital transfers, and we receive the requests and dispatch them the same as we would for an aircraft. And we also have radio communication with them while they're on their transports by a MARCS radio system. So statewide, wherever they are, we do have communication by radio, as well as the GPS tracking. Careflight 3 is shown on the GPS map. You can actually see the automation of the blades turning, which tells us that the aircraft is running. The fuchsia color actually indicates that there is weight on the wheels. The aircraft is still on the ground. Once they lift off, that will turn to a green color, so we'll know they're actually in the air. When we receive a request for a standby for transport, we will actually notify the aircraft by dropping their tones. The crew will report to the aircraft, actually start up the aircraft and prepare for departure until we're notified of either activating, which means we would go ahead and lift for the scene, or if we're canceled for the standby. A lot of times the nature of the call will warrant the standby, and so now they have a scene that sounds as if it could be bad. If it's a motor vehicle crash, there's someone reported unconscious. If there's a gunshot wound, if anything that might seem critical in nature, they'll put us on standby. Once they arrive on the scene, they're able to assess the patient. Then they'll either cancel us or activate us. The paramedics make the request to the 911 dispatch center, who gives us a call to request us to be on standby or activated. There are cases where they'll call and will immediately activate without a standby. You can see here, Careflight 3 at the Warren County base is on a standby for a scene flight for the city of Mason. If for some reason we wouldn't have that radio communication, we would still have the GPS tracking to know if they're actually in the air flying or if they've landed and have weight on wheels. It also has a system that can indicate an emergency. With a simple push of a button, it'll turn red and it'll start flashing and alert us of an emergency in the aircraft. If there's rapid descent or a hard landing, it as well will automatically notify us of the emergency. EMTs, firefighters, doctors, nurses, they have the right, police have the right to request us to a scene. The general citizen without any kind of background, we don't actually activate the aircraft. They may give the information to the 911 center that makes it sound as if we may be needed, and they may put us on standby. The 911 center may, by the information given from the caller, but they can't actually call us and request us to a scene.
Our cruising speed is about 175 miles an hour. So we're making almost 3 miles a minute. Straight line, no stop signs, no speed limits for us. From takeoff to landing, from here to Upper Valley in Troy is about 12 minutes. Full fuel on the aircraft gives us about 3 hours of duration. Flight time. Typically we don't keep it all the way full because the more fuel we take, the less payload we have available for patient weight. So we're just carrying around a lot of extra weight. So typically we'll keep the fuel where it will give us about between an hour and a half and 2 hours or so of flight time. And that gives us about depending on the day, around 1,500 pounds of payload available so we can put that much patient weight on board. We've been using our night vision goggles here for about, I guess, 3 or 4 years now, and they make a world of difference, especially, going into these landing zones at night. Before it was very, sometimes it would be kind of dicey. You just couldn't see what was there. But when you have the goggles on, and you flip them up, everything's black. You flip them down, you can see fields, you can see trees, you can see wires, telephone poles, cell phone towers that aren't lit. It all comes into view, where before it was just a solid black surface. You didn't know what it was underneath of you. In this area, we have the primary controlled airspace is around Dayton Airport and around Wright-Patterson. And we have to be aware of where we're at at all times, and to go into their airspace, which is basically a 5-mile radius of those airports, we have to get permission from air traffic control before we can do that. And both you know, the Wright Pat and the Dayton folks are extremely helpful and cooperative in letting us do pretty much whatever we want to do in their airspace. You know, which is, you know, typically just passing through and helping us get to where we need to get to expeditiously. So. As I said before, you know, no landing is routine. There's always something that, you know, will come up to bite you as soon as you start becoming complacent. But landing at our remote sites, at accident scenes, just innumerable things to be looking for, like power lines and trees and fence posts, and we've had you know, farm animals, cows and horses running through the, you know, where we've tried to land. So there's always something new, and what we ask for is about 100 by 100 foot area that's you know, clear of any obstructions or debris, level, preferably hard surface or grass surface, and they're very good about finding good landing zone for us. It's rare that we get to a scene and have to ask for an alternate landing site. The number one key that crosses over from the military to here is doing everything as safely and expeditiously as possible.
One of the common questions we get is, are you ever scared up there? Do you, you know, I don't think I could do that, and we get that a lot. And when people ask, you know, do you ever get scared? Are you scared to fly, or does it ever worry you? And I can't say that I've ever been scared as a flight nurse with this program, because their attention to safety, the framework they've laid into it with our pilots, our mechanics, our drivers, our nurses, our policies, procedures, the hospital backs us so well that I think, as far as structure goes, I feel like everything is in place to be a safe and rewarding place to work. That I don't feel that any of us have a different motive other than, at the end of the day, to go home safely. We want our patients to go home safe. We want our new hires, when they come in, to feel safe. We all have families, and we're all just normal people that do this kind of job, and I think the hospital does a really nice job to make sure that we can do it with the best resources possible.
The ground crews are wonderful. They love helping us. They love us being out there. We do several safety sessions a year to make sure that they know how to direct us in our landing zone. So we probably do at least 100 of those a year for safety purposes. But we work very closely with EMS, fire, and the police here. And since we've been in the community 30 years, it's really a great place to be, in a sense of we have that connection with those EMS, fire, and police, and also with all the hospitals in the area. And then at that session, they teach those people that are there how to call on the radio, how to set up the cones, you know, if they're using cones or lights, how to talk to the aircraft and tell them how to come in. And then once the aircraft comes in and lands, the flight team gets out, the pilot and the two nurses get out, and they talk about safety around the aircraft again. We actually put one of the EMS people on the litter, and we have them load the patient in, because that's always a challenge. And then we end up turning up the aircraft, turning it on, running the blades, and having them load hot, what we call hot, which means the blades are turning. And that's coordinated. It's about an 1.5 to 2 hour session that we provide. We do probably, like I said, 100 of those, and at least 200 EMS lectures in a year. And those are all provided for free. There's no charge to any of that.
Obviously, it's very dangerous to work around the helicopter. We've got, you know, the big fan on top that's going around. We've got the tail rotor spinning, the engine exhaust, a lot of things to hurt somebody around a helicopter. So before the nurses or will approach the helicopter, we'll get eye-to-eye contact with them and give them a thumbs up to let them know it's safe for them to approach. That way I'm not moving controls or not aware that they're there when they try to approach the aircraft. And when the crew or the fire department, the first responders, whoever is carrying the patient to the aircraft, we'll count them, whether there's 4, 5, or 6 of them, and count them coming in and count them going back out. Make sure that everybody's away from the aircraft before we, take off. Safety is absolutely paramount here. We've operated the program this is our 30th year without any major mishap, and being extremely cautious is the hallmark of that.
So for our nurses, they have to have 3 to 5 years of critical care experience. We like for them to have their bachelor's degree. We like for them to be professionally certified, which is a certification in emergency room nursing, or your CCRN, which is critical care nursing, or they can have their CFRN, which is a critical care flight nurse. They also have to have PALS, which is pediatric advanced life support, ALS, which is cardiac advanced life support. They also have to have ITLS, which is basically a trauma life support. Some of our nurses have TNCC. They all have to become paramedics. So within those 2 years of time that they're here, it's in a sundry of education and training. Their orientation is at least 12 weeks long. We are one of the few programs in the country that provide cadaver lab, which we work on people that have donated their bodies to science, and we do that at least, I know we do that once a month. They also have equipment competencies and checkoffs that they have to do on all the sundry of equipment that they have. They have radio competencies that they do, plus they're required to go out and do clinical time in the areas of the ER, the ICU, the CICU, the perinatal intensive care unit, and the neonatal intensive care unit. But I tell people all the time when they come here, this is a full-time plus job. Full-time plus.
In my own mind, 22 years ago when I set my heart to be a flight nurse, was that I didn't want to have to learn how to take care of patients by the time I got here. I wanted to know that piece of it and learn how to be a flight nurse and just be the best I could with that.
Basically, we have to do everything we can to maintain our skills, and in doing that, we have to do clinicals at the hospital when we're based there. We have to go into the ICUs and the ER and help out and just keep our skills sharp that way. And then in addition to that, we also have to review cases that we go on throughout the month, and also do lab skills and that sort of thing as well.
If there's anything further, we'll have workshop sessions that every once in a while Careflight will come up, they'll land, they'll meet with the staff, they'll go over pieces of equipment that we may not have seen before, access, they'll answer questions about the helicopter and just kind of refamiliarize us with their process and what they're looking for when they come in.
The pilots are responsible for the flight. We're responsible for the safety of the crew and the aircraft. Things we have to look out for are, number one is the weather. We have several weather programs on our computer where we can check weather before we take a flight. We're required by our company and the FAA to maintain certain weather minimums to accept a flight, and that is a 800-foot ceiling and 2 miles of visibility, which is pretty nasty weather. Other things that we cannot fly in are icing conditions, any kind of freezing precipitation, of course, high winds, thunderstorm activity, things of that nature. In the wintertime, we can fly in the snow. That's no problem as long as it's, not a freezing rain type of situation. And of course, we can't fly in that. But as long as the snow is already frozen, it just blows off the aircraft and doesn't stick. Typically, the pilot will stay in the aircraft and we will keep it running. We'll call that a hot load. The nurses will go out, assess the patient, and try to get them loaded and be back in the air in under 10 minutes. So normally we'll stay with the aircraft. In some cases where the patient needs more care on the ground, if it's going to be longer than 10 minutes, they'll have us shut down, and then we'll load the patient, start and depart. In those situations, then yeah, we'll help as far as carrying bags or getting equipment for the nurses, but we don't do any hands-on patient care. At the beginning of our shift every day, we'll come out and do a complete pre-flight of the aircraft, where we'll open up the panels and look inside, and check fluid levels, and just look for the general condition of the aircraft. Then every time before we take off, we'll do a complete walk around to make sure all the cords are unplugged, all the panels are still secure. And at every landing where we shut down, we'll get out and do another walk around, look for oil leaks and security of panels and things like that. So every time before we take off and at landing, we'll check the aircraft, make sure everything's still functioning normally. Whenever we're going to somewhere, one of the nurses will ride up in the co-pilot's seat with us to help look for other aircraft, obstructions or obstacles when we're landing. Obviously, if we're landing at a remote site, it's very critical to be looking for wires, towers, any poles, any loose debris on the ground, and they help out greatly with that. When we have a patient on board, then both nurses will be in the back, and I'll be up front by myself and handling all those duties.
Our job is to look out the left side, watch for aircraft, watch for obstacles, birds, could be balloons and air things that are in the air at this time. When we get to the landing zone, we're that second set of eyes to find them on the ground, watch for obstructions, and make sure we have a safe landing, and really that's it. We can talk on the radio up front. There's a set of full live controls there. Our job is to be able to be a second set of eyes, and we can operate the radio, and that's pretty much it.
In the afternoon of April 19th this year, I ran a stop sign at the intersection of State Route 571 West and Arcanum Bears Mill Road. When running that stop sign, a large truck barreled down and struck my passenger side of the vehicle, sending both of us into a adjacent house. I guess I was stuck in the vehicle for quite a amount of time until the rescue squad got there. Careflight showed up not too much longer and then transported me to Miami Valley. They got me kind of relaxed and stabilized, waiting for Careflight to show up, and they got me in the squad. So those guys down in Greenville and Gettysburg did a really good job getting me ready for the transport to Miami Valley. The accident happened between 2 and 2:30. Careflight showed up maybe 7 minutes after a 911 call, so it was really quick. I had multiple skull fractures, some bleeding in the brain, all kinds of leg fractures, a broken clavicle bone, broken ribs, a couple other things too, but the main concern was my skull fractures. The neurologist at Miami Valley got to look at me quickly, and was there wasn't much they could do about it, just kind of wait and see. So that's what they did.
When we're initially dispatched on the call through the Miami County Communications Center, we respond with a medic and usually 2 personnel and a chase vehicle with another person falling behind to the scene. When that call initially comes in, depending on what type of incident, illness, injury it may be, things are already running through our mind as far as how severe this type of injury or illness may be and whether or not that we may need care flight. So we're looking for things such as, is this person having a heart attack? Are they having a stroke? Or what they commonly try to refer to it more now is called a brain attack, or some type of traumatic injury. So if we think we have something pretty severe going on that may not be able to be handled by the local hospital, what we can do at that point while we're en route to the scene or while we're arriving at the scene, we can go ahead and put CareFlight on standby. And that gets their personnel ready, gives them a heads up. They may need to respond to this department to help them out so they can go to the helicopter and get ready. Once we arrive at the scene, the paramedic in charge will quickly try to assess that patient to determine how severe it is and whether we may need to call CareFlight or not. So at that point, if we determine that CareFlight is needed, what we'll do is we'll contact the communications center here in Miami County. We'll tell them to go ahead and dispatch CareFlight, and as Brent explained, then they're either going to respond to the scene if we have an area big enough to land them there. If not, we're going to bring them to this landing zone here next to the Pickle Fire Department.
And once they get en route, they'll give us an ETA. And at that point, we know approximately how far off they are. We may not always know the direction they're coming from, so we'll kind of keep scanning the air, their airspace, and just make sure that we eyeball them as well. Once we hear or see CareFlight, then we'll get the visual on them. We'll radio them, let them know we have a visual, give them the landing zone conditions, and what we have triggered at that point, if it's here, we'll bring out our equipment and kind of cordon off the perimeter. Also with the police department, as I discussed earlier, they'll block off the streets and make sure that we don't get people in beyond the safe area for when that piece of equipment's landing. When they touch down, the pilot will look directly at us and he'll let us know if it's okay to proceed to the chopper or not, but generally what they want is they want the flight nurses to disembark from the aircraft, come around to us, let us know if they need any help with equipment, and then they'll proceed to the ambulance or to the site where we have the patient.
When we receive a request for transportation, we enter the information into our computer automated dispatch system. Once we receive the request, we can geographically triage which vehicle is the closest. While the vehicle's on the transport, we're able to track them via GPS. We can know where they're at to be able to give a more accurate ETA and to be able to know how quickly we're going to get to the patient and transport them to the facility.
For a scene flight, when that call comes in, it comes directly into our communications center, which is staffed by 2 communication specialists, which are NAC certified. On the scene, there's EMS, fire, police. Any one of those can call and ask for CareFlight. And if it's a hospital transfer, then that call goes through our access and transfer center, which is located here in Miami Valley Hospital, and the first thing that they say is a transport request. Once they know that, whether it's an air, helicopter, or ground unit that they need, then they actually send up an instant message to our communication center, and what happens from there, then our communication center gets the vehicle going, whether it be a helicopter or a ground unit. The time that they're dispatched to the time that they get out, it's silent, because they need to be concentrating and focusing on the mission at hand. Every mission is different, and you never know what you're going to get into when you're out there. And I think that's one of the it's scary at times because you just don't know what's going to happen when you get there. You don't know because the pilot is not allowed to know what type of patient that we're getting. And that's for safety reasons. You don't want him to take a flight. If it was a small child, you don't want him to have precedence over safety because it's a small child. So he is not allowed to know what the mission is.
In addition to actual transport of patients, oftentimes there are community events within our service area that it can be a gathering of the masses. And in those cases where there is the potential for someone to get injured or to need medical transport, we'll often get called to help and participate at these events, and it's really a teamwork kind of process. We work together with the fire departments and EMS and then the local leadership of these communities that are putting on the events to provide that service to them so that they can feel comfortable that if something happens either to the participants or the people that are there viewing the event, that they've got a mechanism again to get that access to care. We do a lot of other community events that are affiliated with trying to prevent injuries For example, one of our programs is called Drive Smart, and this is really targeted at the teenage population around sentinel events that typically might involve drinking and driving. Proms, graduations, those types of events that have a high rate of alcohol abuse by teenagers that can result in some pretty tragic accidents. In those cases, we go out to schools and we will typically work with their organizations such as SAD, the Students Against Drunk Driving, to put on a demonstration of the dangers of drinking and driving, or even driving under the influence of any other type of drug. Well, I think there's a lot of things that make Careflight unique. Probably the first thing are the staff members. We are a helicopter service that transports with 2 flight nurses, and that's not always the case across the country, and the flight nurses have extensive training, and so I think it allows us, they are also cross-trained as paramedics. Because Careflight serves both hospital transfers as well as accident scenes, it gives us a unique ability to sort of adjust to whatever the situation and the needs of the patient are. The other thing that I think is pretty unique about Careflight is that we are a hospital-based service. Many helicopter services these days are sort of an independent business that's operated. We're actually operated by a hospital, and consequently our nurses and our team work in a hospital and are exposed to patient care every single day. Some of the other things are we are an accredited service, and there are only about 30% of the programs across the country that are accredited by the Commission on the Accreditation of Medical Transport Systems. And that's kind of the gold standard voluntary accreditation that Careflight has gone through that looks at safety, patient care, quality issues, and of course aviation safety related issues as well. The other thing that makes us pretty unique is the aircraft that we fly. We fly a twin-engine jet helicopter, and it is capable of carrying 2 patients, and it's quite speedy, and it has a unique couple of features. One is that it has landing gear, which a lot of helicopters, if you've ever looked at helicopters, they have skids on the bottom. Ours actually has landing gear, which allows us to land a distance away from an accident scene and be able to taxi up without blowing a lot of debris like glass or metal around. It also has something called a fenestron system, and that's an enclosed tail rotor system, and so it actually has a shroud around it that protects the tail blades. And when you're working at an accident scene, it's very important to keep the pre-hospital providers safe and bystanders and others, so that people don't walk into the tail rotor and get hurt. And the other thing about our aircraft is they are fully equipped with all types of equipment. They have autopilots, they have color weather radar, night vision goggles, all kinds of high-level instrumentation in them that gives the pilot the best opportunity to do the best job that he can do when he's navigating, flying the aircraft. So I think those are some of the things that make Careflight unique.
In my mind, what makes Careflight unique is that we have been in this community for over 30 years. And I think that Premier Health, Miami Valley Hospital, have supported us, and that is one of the best things about our program.
We are very close. I mean, we work together as best we can to have the best outcomes for our patients, and that sense of team, that sense of working together and getting it done permeates through the whole department. And you know, we understand that we have to do everything efficiently and very well, and in order to have that good outcome for that patient. I have a lot of trust in our pilots, and they do an excellent job of getting us there safely and getting us home safely.
We're so much community and customer focused. We always thank people, and we always say they do a great job, because they do. I mean, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. They're the ones who call us. But I've had the most senior firefighter come up to me and say, when I hear that helicopter coming, it's a sigh of relief. It almost makes me want to cry. Yeah, I do cry. But it's a sigh of relief for them, because they know help is coming. and we're not fixers. You know, we want to get them from the scene or hospital back here so they can be fixed, but we keep them stabilized, and we can do interventions to help keep them stabilized. And that's one of the things I tell my nurses, because one of the things that we do, we are fast. We are fast. We're in and out of here in 6 minutes. We are off the ground in 10 minutes when we're at a scene, so by the time we go get the patient and get back, it's 10 minutes. We're typically in and out of a hospital in 20 minutes. So that's why people call us, because we can get in and out. We don't dilly-dally around. And I think sometimes when you come from some critical care environments, you tend to want to fix it, but we're not fixers. We have to get those people from point A to point B in rapid amount of time. And that's why they call us, because they can't take care of that patient, that issue, that baby at that facility.
Being a nurse is the most rewarding job ever I can imagine in my life. And for me, my most rewarding time as a nurse, especially as a flight nurse, is when, and again, this just happened recently, but I have, every so often a patient comes back and they tell you thank you. And you remember them, and you remember your job, and you do what you do, and you're thankful that it went well, that you can't control the events, you can only do the best you can do. And even when you think you've got it figured out pretty well, somebody comes back and says, do you remember me? And recently a patient came back, and I thought for sure the odds were against him. It would be a miracle if he were to make it through his injuries and stuff. But you work those patients, you work with what you know to do, you do your job, you do it well. And he came back and he asked for me, which surprised me. And somebody else came and said, somebody wants to see you. He's asking for you. I'm like, okay. Came up and he gave me a hug and he goes, do you remember me? And I remembered his last name. And then I started to remember his first name and last name. And you have hundreds of patients sometimes you see, but those stick out. And when you stick out to them and you come back and they say, I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for taking care of me, and what it meant to him to be back with his family, back with his life. That's why we do what we do. And you can just say, I was just doing my job. But when you do your job every day, when you got people's lives right here and you doing it right, it can make a difference. And if you don't do it right, it's going to make a difference one way or the other. And when he came back and he was perfect, I just thought, this is why we do it. And I loved it. He's a very special person. I gave him a set of wings I said, because you truly are a miracle. And, whatever, I wanted to thank him for coming back to see me, because that made me, being a nurse, one more day a really good thing.
The first time I met the flight nurse, I was out of ICU. She came to see me. I don't remember a lot of that conversation. I was kind of still banged up a little bit. But I do remember her last name, so that kind of helped with when I came back to, I went back for my last CAT scan to make sure I was okay, and then I went up to the 7th floor to see Careflight, and I remembered her last name, so I got to actually see her that day. We spoke for a little bit, and we went to take some pictures, and she gave me her medical wings that she wore the day of saving my life, so that meant a lot. And like I said, I wore this today on a hat that I have, and I want to, Careflight does a lot for everybody, and the nurses and the pilots, they're remarkable people, and I want to say that anywhere I can show their some support for them, I do. Seeing my car after I wrecked took my breath away. Now seeing some of these vehicles where people not only die, but sometimes they live because of Careflight, I just right away start thinking about the person rather than just the story. It's not about that anymore. It's more personal to me, and it's became part of me when I go to a scene. It was that crucial moment from takeoff to landing in Miami Valley that really kept me going enough to keep me thriving in life till now. Seeing Careflight do what they do, and over the past 30 years, they've probably saved more lives, than anyone ever knows. They, that crucial time from, like I said, from the accident scene to the hospital is the most vital time of a patient's recovery. Like I said, if they need to go on a rescue squad from, say, Greenville to a Dayton area, that would take 40 minutes. Careflight probably takes 5 to 10 minutes. So, 30 minutes less time to get there is crucial. It's very crucial. What they do is remarkable, and it saves lives. In my case, if it would have been a vehicle transport, I know there wouldn't have been probably saving my life. I wouldn't have got the care I needed and the time I needed to get it. Thank God the other driver of the other vehicle wasn't hurt. And thank God for all the people that were there that day, including Careflight, that got me to my valley fast enough to save my life.
I was orienting someone else at the time, and we picked up a young woman from a hospital who was pregnant, who had some bleeding, and she was doing very well. And we get probably 17 minutes from here, and it's pouring down rain, and she doesn't feel well. And so she starts bleeding, and bleeding severely enough where we're running lights and sirens, severely enough where we're starting multiple IVs. When we get here, we call ahead to the OB department here, and they meet us. The lady actually arrested on the operating table. The baby was 27 weeks, but she survived because I truly believe because of our diligence of keeping track of what was going on with her, getting other IVs started, and a year later she sent us a card and invited us to her daughter's birthday party. So that was a super great moment.
My proudest moment is probably not a single moment, but it's when the patients come back to see us and we know we've made a difference. We know that they have a different life today because of what we did.
Maybe, when I see the aircraft on the news, the evening news, when the aircraft's on for responding to an incident, and that it kind of makes you feel good to be a part of that you're helping behind the scenes.
I think maybe my most memorable moment with Careflight was being on the other end of it a little bit. One day I was driving up to Urbana to work our base up there, and came across a gentleman that had gone off the side of the road on his motorcycle and wiped out, and it was very obvious that he needed to be flown. So I got to see from the first responders end of it. I had to call back and ask for the helicopter and help the fire department when they got there. And there's another gentleman who was a volunteer medic with the fire crew, got there just ahead of me, and he took care of the gentleman as far as the medical end of it went, and I just took care of the making phone calls and setting up landing zone. So.
From the day I got the call saying that I got the job, I mean, this entire experience has just been excellent. I've gone on some scene flights that will certainly stick in my memory, and even some ICU transfers with extremely sick patients. If we're taking them there, they are sick.
Well, I think probably the biggest community benefit that Careflight brings is access to care. We serve a lot of areas in that 150 miles that may not have immediate access to a trauma center, that may not have immediate access to advanced surgical services, cardiac cath labs, various types of advanced procedures, burn care, even pediatric centers. And so what Careflight does is it actually is that bridge to get the advanced care not only out to the patient because of the training level of the nurses. So from the time we arrive, that really begins that level of care because we're carrying all the same supplies as in an ER or an ICU, and the nurses are very highly trained and they can begin processes and procedures that will help the patients right there. And then the flying really eliminates the distance and the time, and so patients that might not have that immediate access to care now do because of CareFlight. And I think that's probably one of the biggest community benefits that it provides. And when you look at some place that you can be at in 15 minutes that might take you an hour by car, it really makes a difference in the outcome of patients when they're critically ill or injured. And I think that's the biggest benefit that we provide.